The offseason is very exciting when we talk about different signings around the NFL. It's less exciting when we talk about cuts. Hi, I'm Nick. This is 10 Minutes with Nick, and a number of topics we're going to cover today in a short amount of time, so we'll get right into it. We're going to start with some of the easy ones for the Buffalo Bills. Now, I've talked about what the Miami Dolphins were doing. Bradley Chubb did get released just the other day, as did our good friend Tyreek Hill. Again, I don't think the Buffalo Bills should really look into either one of them. Bradley Chubb at most with a 1-year prove-it type deal. But let's look inside of the Bills organization right now. I've made clear that I'm not excited about Joe Brady as head coach, but I am excited about the coaching staff. But with any coaching change comes player change. Not every player is going to stick around. So let's talk about a couple of obvious things that the Bills are likely to do. First, the Bills are very, very likely to cut Curtis Samuel. I don't have the exact numbers off the top of my head of how much cap space he saves, but he saves, I think, upwards of $6 million in cap space. And when you're over the cap already, that's a lot of cap. And when it comes to Curtis Samuel, he is a very good player who just, for whatever reason, never quite fit. He had some injury problems, and he never quite got in the flow of the offense, and it just never quite worked out. You saw flashes of what he could be, and it just never quite fit. So unfortunately, we'd be moving on from Curtis Samuel. I don't see that as a bad free agent pickup when we made it. It just didn't work out. Another obvious cut candidate, Taylor Rapp, safety. I go back and forth on him. I do. Last year was not a great year for him, but he was also dealing with some relatively serious injuries that he was trying to play through. He was trying to force his way through. And you get credit for that kind of toughness. But the year before, he wasn't anything special. He was a kind of a average to high average player in the back end of the defense. And the defense is now changing. It is now going from the 4-3 base to a 3-4 base. So it's going to an odd front base. And whether Taylor Rapp can play in that defense is a question that remains to be seen, or whether the coaches even want him to play in that defense. We know his running mate, Cole Bishop, will stay, and Bishop, by the end of the season, looked phenomenal. So what we're looking to find out is if the Bills think they can get a better running mate for Bishop. And that's really those are the two obvious cuts I see, alongside a fan favorite, a personal favorite, Dawson Knox. The problem with Dawson Knox is that he is very expensive. He's a good tight end. He is certainly not a bad tight end. That's not the issue. The issue with Dawson Knox is that he is very expensive at his current number, and you have a better version of him on the roster. Jackson Hawes is younger, cheaper, and can do the things that Dawson Knox does really well. So in a lot of ways, having Dawson in the lineup just robs the younger player of opportunities to get on the field. Now, I think, in fairness to Dawson Knox as a tight end, he 100% could get cut and be a cut candidate and then maybe come back at a cheaper number. That has happened before and certainly could be the case here. He's a favorite of Josh Allen's, so we know that. But that's a call I think the Bills have to make. I don't think you can get out of your cap trouble without cutting Dawson Knox. I went to that website, sticktothemodel.com. I've done their Be a GM simulator a couple of times. And there really isn't a way to get around how expensive Dawson Knox is. There's not a good way to... You can't massage the number. Extending it doesn't really work. the cut option is really the only option you have there. Restructuring it is no good. It just makes him more expensive next season to cut. Yeah, I pause there because it makes me sad. I wouldn't want to lose Dawson Knox, but unfortunately, football is a business, and the Bills have to get under the cap, and they have to get under the cap expeditiously. Speaking of getting under the cap, if you want to learn more about the Bills and how they're going to get under the cap this offseason, like and follow. If you don't want to like and follow, that's okay. We'll talk about it anyway, and we'll be here when you want to listen in. Another move that's been floating around in the Buffalo Bills sort of ether, which I think is a stupid conversation, is Dion Dawkins as a trade candidate. So the blindside protector for Josh Allen for his entire career is allegedly a trade candidate, according to a number of sources. I don't know necessarily that those sources are legitimate, and I don't know that it's any more than, let's say, off-season gobbledygook. This time of year, a lot of stuff just sort of gets thrown out into the air. The NFL offseason is full of wild stories that just pop up out of nowhere, and podcasts like this one just say anything to try and get attention and to keep audience interested in the dark times of the offseason. We're, especially right now, the new league year hasn't even started yet. We're really just waiting for that legal tampering period to open up so that teams can start signing players, start signing and trading players and, doing all that kind of stuff. Dion Dawkins as a trade candidate is one of the sillier pieces of news I've heard in quite some time. Don't get me wrong, you'd probably get good stuff back for him. He's a very good left tackle, and the film and his advanced numbers back that up. He is the starting blindside protector for Josh Allen for a reason. He recently signed an extension for a reason. He is a very, very good player. He's strong, he's fast, and when he's in pass pro, he's one of the nastier guys on the field. He'll pancake a guy with no problem and take him down. So you'd get a good amount back for him. You wouldn't get a king's ransom, but you'd get a good amount back. You'd probably get, maybe a good player and a couple of picks, something like that. But the question with any time you trade or cut a candidate, or trade or cut a player, what you have to say to yourself is, who can I get to replace this guy? And that's always the big question. Taylor Rapp as a cut candidate makes sense because this is a deep, deep, deep safety draft class. So this is a good class to, say, use even a second or third round pick on a safety, and you're likely to come back with a good guy. Curtis Samuel makes sense to cut. You've got to go get a number one wide receiver anyway, and your wide receiver room is going to be crowded by the time you're done. Dawson Knox makes sense to cut. You have his replacement on the roster. Dion Dawkins, you don't have a viable replacement that you have or that you really could go get unless you're really banking on somebody from the draft immediately becoming that kind of protector. The Bills' offensive line is already in a little bit of flux as David Edwards and Connor McGovern are both pending free agents. And the Bills don't really have the cap space to sign one or both of them. Now, if they play around with things a little bit, they will have the space likely to sign one of them. But you're going to lose at least one of them if you want to maintain some level of cap space. You're probably going to lose most likely David Edwards, who is a good left guard, but is made better by the fact that he plays next to Dion Dawkins. Connor McGovern, I think you can make the argument that it's more important to keep your starting safety. Of course, I would have said that about Mitch Morse as well, and unfortunately we did have to let Mitch Morse go. I miss that guy. He was a great, great center when he was playing with the Bills. He retired very shortly after playing with the Bills, but, I'd say the locker room misses his vibes, if that makes sense. So no, Dion Dawkins as a trade candidate makes no sense to me whatsoever. We'll go through more candidates for cut, trade as the year goes on. We'll get back into the Justin Jefferson conversation. It made somebody on the internet real mad, and that made me giggle. But the Bills have a lot of work to do to get under the cap just in the first place, and they got to start soon. They haven't made any major moves yet, but trust me when I say a bunch of moves are likely coming. Most likely it's going to start with restructuring Josh Allen's contract, which is something that quarterbacks do all the time. It means the quarterback gets a big fat payday and their cap hit drops way down. It's just contract cap space magic that GMs and QBs do every year. Don't get too excited. It's nothing special. But that's all I got for you for the moment. We'll circle back around and we'll keep talking about this. Until next time, I'm Nick. This is 10 Minutes with Nick. Have a great day.